Okay. So this is October 2nd, 2025, Build Workgroup meeting. Let's start with the first item on the agenda, updating infrastructure providers list.
Okay. That first one, I've been meaning to work on that. I have not yet started on that. I've done a little bit of cleanup in some of the Markdown docs for some, removing Equinix from some of the stuff in our secrets repository because there's no more Equinix to connect to. So I've removed some of that. But I still need to get in there and start editing on that. Part of what I've run into is I think what we need to do as the infrastructure working group is come up with a list of who is on that list and what they provide us and what its value is to us, but then maybe work with the OpenJS Foundation's marketing team and have them write it in a way that is, more PR speak, but more so than I would do it. I don't necessarily feel comfortable.
Yeah, so there's another effort going on in the website repo.
Mhm.
I don't know if it was linked in this issue. I need to go find it now. Which was talking about putting stuff up on like the actual website, the Node.js public-facing website. So we have had the thing in the build README, well, for as long as I've been involved in the project at least.
Mhm.
But maybe that's there because there was lack of at the time there wasn't anywhere more obvious or public facing to put it.
Mhm.
I guess the question is, do we still need to have both? I mean, on the one hand, if you're this is a specific thing for the build infra. Obviously, anything on the public website will be more than just the build infra. It will encompass any other services that are used by the project that are not necessarily for the build stuff. But I mean, that's an interesting question. Is like, does it make sense to keep the whole thing as is, or maybe we cut it down a bit, or redirect things to the public website, or whatever it is? But I imagine then that the same people from the foundation side that would be helping that effort along would be the people, you were saying we get them to look at whatever we have and ask, in our README to put the right words or the right marketing
Right.
things.
So our
Yeah.
our README should really just be a redirect to be like the build infrastructure working group relies on services from many providers. They're listed here on the website, and that's the just deflect it entirely out of this repo and then store it somewhere else. That makes a lot more sense to, and then have
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think, obviously the website stuff hasn't happened yet, but it's under
Right.
discussion. So where are we? Here we are. I can put that into the minute notes as well. So yeah, there's
It's changed 76. Oh no.
but yeah.
This doesn't
Okay.
do spell check, does it?
Apparently not.
Let's
Well,
see.
it's highlighted some things. So, or maybe that's. Oh no, is that just highlighting the edits? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just the edits. Yeah.
All right. Oh, we have spell check later. Let's see.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, good.
Whether that's helpful or not is another question, but
I can turn it off. I can turn it off at the end, I guess.
no,
But
it's fine. It's fine. It's just, yeah. Okay, so
So I'll look at that PR and basically try and forward on to the web team or whoever's working that PR who
yeah,
we
so I
are
think
using, who we're not using, and try and funnel the effort into, collect it all in one place and not take it out of our README and
yeah, I mean, I yeah, it probably needs someone on the foundation side to comment on to whether it makes sense to keep the stuff in the README or, like you say, redirect things to the website. Um, I think the important thing is the visibility to the kind sponsors that are donating stuff to the project, so that
mhm.
they continue, and potentially other people other companies or providers may consider
Right.
doing
And
similar
and
things.
and in a consistent manner and in a way, because also that's the thing is like some of these providers we've made agreements with them to say we will feature you on the website and we will, put your
Yeah,
name in a prominent location. That's part of the agreement.
yeah.
So we just got to make sure that we're fulfilling that side of the agreement as well.
So I think for that other PR, quite a few of the people on there are working on the website, but I think they're also in the similar position where they're trying to then get foundation input to make sure that it's actually what is you know what is okay from their point of view. So yeah, there's obviously the background stuff in the actual mechanics of however they've got the page working, but then the actual content and the words or whatever, I think they're trying to get foundation input to drive that.
Great.
Okay. So that would be that. Next item would be upgrading the compilers.
Yeah, so Michael is doing the remaining Ubuntu CI things. That is, as far as I know, the final Linux systems. Um, so yeah, then there's a list in the issue about the remaining platforms, which I think they'll take a bit longer. Things like AX, SmartOS. Well, assuming those platforms want to move at all to CLang, but yeah, we believe we once the remaining Ubuntu machines are upgraded. Um, Actually, Ryan, while you're here, there was a question mark over the Hetzner machines and whether we actually had access to easily get those up to the next version of Ubuntu. So I think they're 22.04 at the moment, and I think we need to be on 24.04 to get the version of CLang that we were moving, later versions of Node
Mm,
2.
okay.
So
Yeah, I
it's
can.
not super urgent, but yeah, it's like we've done most of the Ubuntu's, but I think Michael's also said that maybe we don't have access to Hetzner, or
We should have access to Hetzner. Let me look in and
okay, yeah,
find out whether or not I've put that into the build working groups, secrets repo and how we have
yeah,
access to it. And that's
yeah.
a good call out. I will.
But yeah, it's just defensive at the moment because we believe that there will be a V8 version that we will not be able to build with GCC. So the long-term
Mhm.
plan is to move things to CLang. So at the moment, stuff still does kind of build with GCC. So we're not super urgently falling over ourselves to upgrade everything, but we are trying to upgrade things where we can. And the Linux machines are the easiest things to get to where we think they need to go.
Yeah, I think as long as one team maintains GCC, AIX is doing it right now. It builds, but then yeah, I guess if they take a bit longer to make use of GCC, we're not going to force using Clang, right? Because if they maintain GCC, then GCC it is for that platform, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's that. Next item would be adding macOS 15 CLI images with Xcode 16.4.
All right. Big status update on this one. We're done with the CI images for Xcode 16.4. I have restructured and re-architected all of the Packer HCL so that kind of before we had a whole bunch of different Packer HCL files that duplicated all of the image building across 4 different machines, a matrix of architecture and test and release. Now it builds, we have just one, and it builds the test images, and then we build the release images off of the test images. And so there's actually 2. There's the build and the release, or the test and the release Packer HCL. That 4163, that pull request there, that's the next PR to come through. The issue I'm running into right now is that there is a GitHub Actions workflow that checks the old Packer HCL to verify that they all work, and it's sort of built into the old regime. I have not updated that workflow. So I added a few more issues to kind of work through to clean that up. One of the things I ran into is I was trying to rebuild the 13 images with Packer, and I can't. And the reason I can't is that macOS 13 is now old enough that Homebrew no longer has binaries for it. And so it's switched back into that regime where when you do brew install various things, it goes and has to compile them. And the problem is that when you're running Packer, you only have an hour of authentication token to the to Orca. Like you authenticate to Orca, you start the Packer build, and after 60 minutes, that authentication token times out, so the next command that it tries to run fails, and so it dies halfway through the build. So I don't know that we'll be able to use this existing regime to rebuild the 13 images. However, I don't recommend that we do that anyways, because the images are already built. We've already got everything we need on them. If we ever need to make adjustments or tweaks to them, we can always just take the images that are there, start a VM, make the change, and save it off as a new image. And so that's sort of and I don't foresee having to do much to the 13 images after this. I think we're good until 13 is going to be end of life. Which I'm not sure which version of Node supports macOS 13, or whether we're saying 5 does, or whether where along the chain that is. But so what I'd like to do is just remove all the old Packer HCLs that build the 13 images, because we're not going to be using that anyways, because it's still going to time out, and then change that GitHub Actions workflow that checks, and all that's doing is checking to make sure your Packer HCLs are validate. So you can't check in invalid Packer HCL. But yeah, that's where that's at. So everything is working. We've got the new images built. We've got Orca upgraded to 15. I'm sorry, Orca upgraded to 3.5, which is the newest, latest, and greatest. So we're already set up if we want to build Tahoe images. If we, the Sequoia images are the ones that we just built, but like we are able to do Tahoe already because of that upgrade that happened on Tuesday. So the future is already possible. We've got the pull request in. I committed that to the build repo so that the Node 24 and back runs off of the OS X 13, and Node 25 and forward runs off the OS X 15 images in testing. We're not like double testing anything. The release images all run off of the OS X 15 images now, and they build all the way back. I have an old Intel laptop that I can kind of pop out. I think it's even maybe running 13. Let's see which operating system is on that. But I could check just to make sure that Node opens up off of the thing, off of the package that we built off of that. But so far I tested on my modern one, and it works fine. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole update for that. It's done.
Good. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, that's it. Sadly, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does highlight the issue when we were bumping into or Mac Stadium having issues with the shared VM file system, which is basically, where you have ephemeral nodes, but we need to have a persistent cache so that, the builds don't take 8 hours. There's a shared file system that is using NFS to kind of stay there in between. So as new images come up, they still have access to the shared file system. And that was having some issues for a little while where it would just freeze and the images wouldn't be able to complete. And so we had a good week there where everything was just kind of broken. And it sort of highlighted the fact that, like, okay, yeah, maybe we do need to have another OSX provider, or maybe we do need to have another OSX regime or something to look at here. And so the advantage is these VMs are now OCI compatible images. And so if we could find anybody else that would allow us to just turn on a VM, we can use these same images for that. So our build process is solid that way. I'm not sure Mateo talked to somebody at a service provider, and we've got a meeting with them next week to discuss, and they have macOS infra, so we may be able to have a new provider coming soon. So that's
Okay.
not sure if that's going to yield something or if I have reservations about small service providers that I've never heard about being like, here's your free stuff, and it's like, how long do we have this for? But given that they're a backup and a secondary provider, that may be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have concerns if they were the sole.
Yeah.
If they ended up being the sole provider, but like I said, if they're a backup.
Yeah.
I mean, before we had Nearform that hosted physical like Mac Mini servers, and they were the backup, the failover,
Yeah.
For Mac Stadium. So Mac Stadium has been generally good, but on the odd occasion before where they've had issues, it wasn't so obvious to the project because we just fell over to those self-hosted Macs, the Mac Minis at
Yeah.
Nearform. But
Yeah.
obviously, they were unable to continue to host those for us, so we're now back down to the single provider, which is great when it works, and then anything
Yeah.
hiccups,
Yeah.
then the whole thing is
I just want to
Hmm.
when we do have problems, we don't want it to be obvious to the project. that's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping to avoid. So
Yeah. So that's why while we haven't been successful, while it's not a requirement for platforms in the Node infra, we've generally tried where possible to have at least two providers. Where some places it's just not possible because they're so specialized that something like it's off the top of my head, like Linux and 390. There's not very many places that offer 390 hardware. So
right.
at the moment that's at OSU, I think. Well, through the Linux One program at IBM, but I think that's at OSU. So there are some places where we are on one provider, but others we are we've tried where possible. I think like ARM now we're back to one provider, whereas before no actually we're on two, aren't we? Because we are temporarily on that Azure account. But it's kind of
Wait, which Azure account?
the foundation. So you moved the Equinix Metal
Oh, right.
to that Azure account. So I don't know what the long-term plan is there, but at the moment we've got the ARM machine spread across our that Azure account and the OSU resources we had.
Right. It's true. Um,
Okay. Is there anything
yeah.
else to mention with the macOS stuff?
No, not with the macOS stuff. I'm feeling pretty good about it. After I get those kind of tweaks in there, if anybody wants to look at, unfortunately, it's a massive pull request that has all the changes. There's some separate commits, but mostly the documentation. Hopefully, isn't too. I tried to just being able to build the images is like 5 layers of authentication, and it's really annoying, because yeah, it is, but that's how it works. So yeah. But yeah, that's about it for that macOS thing. I do have a couple other things I wanted to bring up that didn't make it to the build agenda because I didn't think about adding them. I should bring that up in the GitHub. Let's see, there's one issue that we have. It's sort of an older issue. DigitalOcean and being better about where is it? There's a
Yeah, I don't have the link, but I know the one the one about optimizing our usage with DigitalOcean credits.
yeah, optimizing. That's the word I'll look for.
Um,
Maybe credits.
I think it's something like it may have abbreviated DigitalOcean to
DO.
DO.
Yeah, there it is. 3563. I Ben was renewing the DigitalOcean credits, and I was just like, well, what are we spending on? And I kind of got in there and I dug around. I actually put together a spreadsheet that has literally everything we're spending on, and I found a whole bunch of things to trim down. And I'm not sure what the next steps are on some of these. Like I have some questions, but like I think we can just shut a lot of this stuff off, but I don't know who's particularly using it. We could save about $500 a month about $450 a month if we clean some of this up, and that gives us another couple of months of DigitalOcean. So I just wanted to call that out as something that like I'd like to trim down if at all possible. I think some of it was like the metric server. Like, is that actually being used, or was that a server that was building metrics, or was it a server that's serving metrics? And which metrics is it building and serving? And
I honestly do not know how the metric stuff works now.
Okay.
So I know the majority of stuff is running on Google Cloud Functions. Is that yeah? We've got some code running on Google Cloud Functions, which is taking the Cloudflare logs and scrubbing PII from personal information from the log entries, and then spitting out JSON files, which are going into a Google storage bucket. But I don't know.
That's all using GCN, like Google Cloud.
The majority of it is. I just don't know if any part of it touches the metric servers anymore.
Yeah, it didn't look like it to me. I couldn't find any fresh data or files on there.
So the main problem is there's not very many people left that actually. Well, I'll be there aren't that many people left that actually understand how the metric stuff is actually running, working. I think someone stepped in and tried to figure some of the stuff out. But there is stuff in the build repo, and I don't know how current it is, which is the confusing part. So there is stuff in the build repo, like in the Ansible stuff, that talks about the metric server. But again, probably like you, I don't know if that is current or if that was the old stuff, and maybe it's not. So some of the Google Cloud Function stuff talk about deployment, but it doesn't talk about it in great detail. So I don't know if people are deploying. Well, I'm pretty certain no updates have actually been happening, but the question is, are updates happening from people's workstations, or do they need to happen from like the servers? Because presumably somebody somewhere has to put a Cloud Function token or identifier to be able to update the stuff in Cloud Functions. So GTF.
Yeah.
The metric stuff, I think we'll need to figure out. It's possible we can turn some of that stuff off. I just don't know because it's not something I'm that familiar with. I don't know that anyone remains that is using Gesminid. So just for the benefit of everyone here or watching the recording, Gesminid is some tool that sort of caches things from popular modules from npm and then can search like the code to find Node API usage. So if Node says like we want to deprecate something, in theory you could go to this Gesminid server and query it and say like, of the top packages that we've cached, how many of those are actually using this API in Node? But I don't know how many people in Node actually remember this even exists or would even query it. So that's a potential thing we could turn off.
Yeah, when I search things like the Node.js build or the Node.js repository for Gesminid, like that word does not show up anywhere. Like no one's saying like I found this on Gesminid or like.
Yeah.
It is invisible.
I'm pretty certain the old mounts and the volumes that aren't attached to anything, that those can go.
Yeah. That Node.js org is attached to the web. Like there's like a old home and then the new home, and they're both attached to the web server.
Okay.
And but one's mounted on like old home or something like that. So I don't know that we still need that, but that's like $200 a month just for that.
I suspect not. I think probably what happened at one point is we probably needed to bump the size of the disk.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the current home is a bigger disk than the old
Oh,
home.
it is. One's 2 TB and one's 4 TB.
Yeah.
And
So
the two.
I'm guessing what happened is we ran out of disk space. We attached a
Mhm.
larger drive. Attached a larger disk to it, and then cloned stuff over to the larger disk, and then
And then
haven't done
just
the
the
cleanup
smaller
and
one.
removed the
Yeah.
old disk. Yeah. So I think that can go as well. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, I just didn't want to unilaterally start destroying things that, someone was like, wait, no, we need that. It's
I think it's in the realms of it's there just in case, but I think just in case probably isn't a good enough justification to
yeah.
keep
And
it
and
going
and
in the long run. So
and
yeah.
if it hasn't just in case needed it in the last like 7 years or however long it looks like it's been there, it's
I'm I'm pretty certain it's been quite a few years since we
yeah,
last put the disk space on. So part of the reason we're now putting the binaries on R2 is because we were running out of storage
right.
on the web server. I mean, we did things like in the past we stored every like nightly build and every V8 Canary build, which I think we now have scripts to prune those on a regular basis. And again, that may have been part of the we've got these stuff on the old disk if we need to pull back things we've now deleted because we're pruning stuff. But again, like you said, if we've not needed it in the intervening years, I doubt we'll need it anymore. And if it's backup, if it's downloads and stuff, we have things on the backup server, so we don't need to keep an
Hmm.
old disk on the live server.
Right.
That's,
And then the old snapshots we can probably remove as well. They're from like 8 or 9 years ago, so I don't see us restoring those to do anything with them. But
yeah, I mean, I don't think it would do anyone any good to restore any of those because it's
yeah,
not they're nowhere near where we are at the moment.
okay. I just added a comment to that to kind of come up with a plan. Uh, Gzemnid, I'll get on and just check any logs to see if there's anybody even hitting a query or something. Uh, just see if there's any usage whatsoever, and if there's not, then you know, um, it didn't look like it even worked. So, and then
It's possible it's broken in the meantime and nobody's noticed
yeah,
and they
yeah.
fix it. Yeah.
Related to broken in the meantime and no one's noticed. So one of the servers that was on Equinix Metal that I had moved out of one of the accounts and reproduced was the unencrypted server. And unencrypted server used to be sort of a secondary head for our load balancer at Cloudflare. It used to toggle back and forth between the web
Yeah.
server and that. But then now we're serving dists. We're no longer serving the only thing we were serving off that was the releases and the disks, right?
Yes.
And all the websites on Vercel. So now that's all on Cloudflare and all in the R2 bucket strategy. And so it's the backup of that. And
Yeah.
so unencrypted is no longer part of that. Like it's not the fallback to the fallback anymore. So the only thing that was on unencrypted that still was a service that we were providing that we haven't yet like removed from the community was the option for people to build mirrors using rsync. And so we were offering an rsync endpoint off of that encrypted server. Um, that was it's used but not a lot. And the server itself is costing about $500 a month worth of Azure credits that we could
Mhm.
probably put into something a little more valuable. But also it's another server to maintain, it's another server to take care of. And so I have looked into it, and the people that are primarily complaining about the rsync not working are people behind the firewall in China, and they're the only ones actively engaged in this rsync issue. And so one of the things I proposed that they said, yeah, that'd be great, is if we could make the R2 buckets public, that we serve our data out of, then they can use our clone, which is basically rsync but for S3 buckets, to make their mirrors. And so what I propose is that we take the buckets where we have all of our releases and allow read-only public access to those. So right now we have the sort of the worker that replicates a hierarchy navigation that we had before, to sort of mimic an FTP server. But if the buckets were public, then they could run our clone. They wouldn't need rsync at all. We could shut off the rsync server and shut off unencrypted entirely and remove that from the infra as something we're responsible for. So I'm not sure who we need to talk to or who needs to vet this idea, whether or not, we don't want to make the R2 buckets, read-only public or not, and that's sort of the question of like, is this a TSC question? Is this a web team question? Is this a, who should we
No, I
ask?
think that's, well, I think technically it's a build working group question. We should probably drag the web infra people along because they are currently maintaining the R2 worker that's sitting between the R2 and so like I said, people at the moment are going through that worker to get the FTP like directory listing interface. So I think we should loop them in, see if they have an opinion. But I think, yeah, it's probably us because it's all the R2 stuff is through Cloudflare. So I think you were asked to give some access to some of the web infra team,
Yeah.
to bits of Cloudflare. But I think ultimately, I should say maybe open an issue in the build repo and then we'll discuss it there. But I think it is I think it is the working group's decision. I think the TSC will just defer to us, based on what we recommend. So yeah, I guess yeah, I mean the R2 stuff is relatively new in the last couple of years, so we've been on the side of caution, which is you give the smallest amount of access, and then if you need a bit more, we have a discussion, and yeah, if everyone's okay with it, we expand it a bit, I guess. We weren't dealing with R2 before, so now we are. So yeah, we're in a new world, and like you said, we evolve everything as we go along. So
yeah, and it would be nice to be like, we're dealing with R2 now we're not dealing with rsync. Just to keep our plates.
So I can't think of a reason. I'm assuming that if you gave read-only access to the R2 bucket, that Cloudflare is reliable enough to to keep the to respect the desired level of access. So that shouldn't open us up, in theory, to people. The concern would be someone modifying the actual content on the R2 bucket. But like I said, if it's read-only access, in theory, that shouldn't be able to happen.
Yeah, I think the only concern that I would have is, back to metrics and calculating and logs and figuring out, usage and things like that. Like, I mean, we're not getting that out of rsync and that now, but if people started downloading directly from R2 buckets, like if someone's like, oh, here's a link to the latest node, and they pass that link around and it starts to, like if that becomes an access pattern that circumvents any of our whatever metrics we have in place, then that could be a concern.
The metrics are coming out of Cloudflare logs, and I don't know if there's a distinction in Cloudflare as to how the downloads are counted.
Right.
So I only have a very high level understanding of what we do on metrics. So unfortunately, not at the low enough level to know. But I think there is code in the build repo that does the processing. So I don't know exactly how the stuff exfiltrates out from Cloudflare into the Google Cloud Function worker, but the code that's running on the function the code that's running on GCF is in the build repo. So it takes the Cloudflare logs, reads each log line, and then processes the log line. And my hope is that everything being downloaded from R2 is being reported via those logs, and the thing can process
Great.
those.
When
I'm assuming it is because this all existed before the R2 worker was put in. So we were serving stuff from Cloudflare in terms of the load balancer. So we had the downloads go through the load balancer at Cloudflare anyway. And then what we've done is we've put R2. So I think we're actually getting, it might be logs from the load balancer maybe rather than R2 directly. So yeah, maybe like you said, it might. Well, on the one hand, like you said, we're not counting those downloads anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's more if we're looking at our metrics and then we switch everything over to using these R2 buckets, and then we say instead of using rsync, use rclone, and suddenly our metrics all shoot up, like have a massive jump. At least we want to be able to explain that, that like, oh, suddenly all these people are pulling from the place we were counting and they weren't before. But it just making sure that whoever's responsible for those metrics, which I don't even know where the end result of the metrics are, like how do you see them? Are they
okay. Second.
Is there a downloads page somewhere that says
Okay, so where are we? So ignore most of the stuff on this page. but at the top of the page there's a thing that says for current metrics go here. That will take you to, so I think in the same way that like we've got an R2 thing to generate an index page, we've got something similar on Google Cloud Functions to generate an index page for this Google storage bucket. And I think there's a bug in it where it's not paging through all the entries properly.
Yeah, it stops at 2024.
Yeah. So but all the JSON files are there. It's just the index that this links to has only indexed the first X number of pages of results. But there's also so there is this, which Matteo put together. So Matteo put together a little app that goes to the same Google's cloud storage bucket, but via the API rather than the index page that we've got. So it's pulling the same data that index page was trying to index, and is then graphing it. So
slowly.
Well, I guess it's doing it, caching whatever
on
it is, but
demand
it
or whatever.
will do it, and then you'll eventually get some graphs out. Effectively, that first link I did was where we used to send the metrics when we were counting everything through our own Nginx servers. So that's when we self-hosted everything and we didn't have any load balancing in front of the web server. And then we switched to Cloudflare CDN because we started having load issues on the distillation droplet. So the CDN helped, but then we suddenly found that, oh, now people are downloading through CDN. The download numbers we're getting through Nginx are completely inaccurate because we're not seeing most of the hits. So then some work was put into the metric stuff that's now running on Cloud Functions to take the Cloudflare logs and pull the metric numbers out of that.
As an aside,
yeah,
we might want to move those Cloud Functions from GCP over to Cloudflare because we can do it the workers there, and we have a very good agreement with Cloudflare, so that way we could just eliminate the GCP issue entirely.
I think there is some sort of Damocles hovering over Google Cloud Functions in that something was being deprecated this year or next year, probably next year.
Okay.
We were supposed to look at whether we needed to migrate or not, and I guess if we do need to migrate into R2 is probably makes more sense than because I can't even remember if the Google Cloud Functions account is a foundation account or an account that somebody in Build had that they were using.
I've never logged into it, so I didn't know we had a Google Cloud. So that's
I can't remember that it's in the admin logins, but there is a JSON file because Ash got me to commit it to the secrets repo. So there's a JSON file I think in the infra bit that has the token to Cloud Functions, so that at least you in theory could deploy this stuff to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Well,
mean, maybe,
Mateo's page never loads. I just
it did. So I don't know. Maybe there's some. Yeah, whatever.
it's just not it's not loading for me, but
Yeah,
yeah,
okay. But it's just a graph of the actual numbers. So rather than like
yeah,
you manually paging through the JSON files and hand adding them up. So we used to have graphs on the website, but then those graphs were based on the Nginx stuff, and then we changed the Nginx stuff to the Google Cloud storage stuff. So all of those JSON files that are there are processed. So they've scrubbed out all the PII information. So in
yeah,
theory, we can't track who is actually downloading. but
right,
it's amalgamated that on this date there were so many Mac OS builds downloaded, for example,
right.
or Node.js 22 builds downloaded, for example. Like you said, it probably does make much more sense to put that on R2 if the logs are coming from Cloudflare anyway.
Yeah,
And like I said, we have an R2, a Cloudflare agreement. We should probably be running that on R2, and then put the actual process logs onto another R2 bucket, or possibly the same R2 bucket. We can have that discussion. Um,
I mean, Cloudflare's even got their own metrics graphs and everything else for downloads of things. You might be able to just
maybe we
expose
can
that.
use that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Well, what I'm getting a sense of here is that there isn't a metrics page that lots of people are paying attention to that is going to disturb a lot of people if there's a large change in those metrics from switching rsync over to R2. This doesn't. I'm not sensing that there's a
so
like it.
so it's one of the things that people occasionally ask for. And at the
Mhm.
moment, we now direct them to Mateo's page, given that he did the work to do it. Although, like, it's not loading for you right this moment, but it does generally work
Okay.
occasionally. So that's all we have at the moment is the raw processed. Sorry, the processed logs in raw format that if you actually went to the Google buckets, you could pull down, and then whatever people like Mateo has written to look at that on top. We used to have things like that first URL that graphed stuff, but that was all based on the Nginx stuff. So when I said ignore all that, that's because it's all it's not useful because it's not counting the
Updating.
right
Yeah.
stuff. It's the kind of thing that people are interested in if it's there, but it's also the kind of thing that so far no one has really worked on replacing what used to be there. So I mean, one
Yeah.
option would be to either see if we can migrate the stuff that Mateo's done onto something attached to the website, whether that's on Vercel or something from Cloudflare that generates some graphs or something or something existing already on Cloudflare that we just link through. But I think people are interested to find out, like, how many people are downloading like the latest version of Node, or how many people are downloading an end of life version of Node, and then on what platform. So it is things that people are interested in. But yeah, right at this moment in time, we don't have something directly on the website that will break, other than we do point people at the storage bucket. So if stuff stops appearing on the storage bucket, I don't think we'd get an immediate complaint, but you'd probably get a complaint in like a few weeks or months that
Yeah.
someone suddenly says, "Oh, I was going to like Mateo's page, and it's like we haven't had any numbers in the last month, and or the numbers are flat because they haven't moved."
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of like deprecating rsync, we are engaging with this one community member from
Mhm.
on the other side of the firewall,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Did you shut this off already?" Because apparently, when I moved the unencrypted server over and set up the cron jobs to rsync everything over to from the web server to unencrypted,
Yeah.
that apparently isn't working and hasn't worked since I've done it back in
Okay.
May.
Okay.
And so
It's that
also we've only had one complaint, so it's like maybe we don't need rsync.
Yeah,
It's
maybe.
another indicator that like this has been broken for months. Do we actually need it?
I don't know. So, yeah, one of the problems we had, which is, I mean, it's good that you've got engagement, because one of the problems we had is we had no idea who was using the rsync
Right.
endpoint. So I think we were aware that it was being hit, in that I think we had logs that suggested that people were
We
hitting
do.
the endpoint, but it wasn't clear who they were. I think there's been at least more than one mirror in behind the Great Firewall of China.
Mhm.
I think there's an older mirror that is possibly unmaintained now, and then some newer mirror, but I couldn't tell you the exact URLs for those because I don't use them.
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like Cloudflare has kind of obviated the need for most other mirrors. Like, unless there's something special, like you need this behind the firewall. Like, I mean, Cloudflare
I
even
think,
works in
yeah,
China, so it's like
yeah,
it's
yeah. And to be fair, so that async endpoint, I think at one point we did have a message on there, but I doubt people saw it too much, because if you just had some automation doing the async, you probably weren't paying attention to any
mhm.
messages we put up on the page. But I think years ago we did have a notice on there saying that we were planning to sunset it by some date, which is long gone, a couple of years ago,
2022. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
because it used to be not just the rsync endpoint, but we used to have like an Nginx server that was mirroring the other server.
hmm
But the clue is in the name unencrypted. Originally,
yeah,
that endpoint served everything on plain HTTP or rsync without any certificates or
right.
TLS or any sort of encryption. So we did was it 2020, either 2022 or 23? It might have been 23. So I think the original message was that we were intending to turn off the unencrypted endpoint in terms of
Yep.
putting encryption on it, which we did, but it was like a year or two after the original date we said we were going to do it. And it could just be that it's now served its purpose, and yeah, we can probably sunset it. And like you said, if there's a alternate place to push people to that were using the rsync, then yeah, that'd be great. But if not, maybe we shut it down and then see who complains, and then work out if we need to put a solution in place to help them.
Yeah, I think the solution is tell everyone to use our clone instead of our sync.
We'd
And
need to enable that.
make the buckets public. The
Yeah.
main impact of that is that it will change the stats somewhat. The stats are not so rigidly locked in, and people are not
Mhm.
consistently looking at them every day for trends and everything else, that
But
that sort of impact will matter as much.
I realize
They'll
that
want to
Node,
see that, but
I realize that Node is an outlier in terms of infra and stuff, but I don't know. Are any do you know if any other of the OpenJS projects sort of utilize Cloudflare for downloads or CDN balancing, that sort of stuff, or hosting
um,
too?
not
I'm just
yet. I
wondering.
mean,
Yeah, I'm
basically
just
we
wondering
got
if it was a I can't see that we're the only project that wants to track at an aggregate level downloads and
mhm.
and by versions or platforms or whatever it is. So it almost feels like
I think,
not even in the foundation, presumably just in general, that you're having some sort of solution
yeah, I
to
think
get help.
where it shifts is a lot more projects are more
Mhm.
using
Yeah,
GitHub as their distribution mechanism for distributing
yeah,
releases. And
mhm.
so it's, where Node has its own
Yeah,
servers and its own pages for all the releases and stuff. That's where it becomes unique, instead of it just being something linked off of a GitHub page. And so
yeah,
there isn't as many projects
that's fine. Mhm.
that have this sort of need by expanding
Okay.
it out. So, but, okay, well, I will set up a proposal for the R2,
Yeah.
opening that bucket up as a replacement for the rsync.
Mhm.
Rsync looks broken now. I don't see that we need to keep that server up at all. I'm not sure that there's anything else going on there. I might just shut that server off for a month and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Because
for a few of the servers, probably shutting them off and seeing what happens is probably a good prelude to removing them.
yeah,
Because yeah, it's yeah, turn them off. Presumably, if someone then does need them, we can turn them back on. And then, like I said, if we go a month or two without anyone complaining, then probably we can just delete them. Definitely the disks and things. I think those can probably go now. But yeah, the servers, probably shut them off, I guess, and then see who complains.
great.
Perfect. We got about 3 minutes left. Anything you want to discuss about on this issue? Ryan, you brought it up.
No, that was part of the discussion we had earlier. So that's the link under the cleanup stuff. It's already
Okay.
been posted. Yeah.
Okay. So
No, are you? Oh,
No,
no,
no.
yeah, the
yeah,
the
yeah,
infrastructure
yeah,
providers. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Last item here is enabling Rust.
There's been no progress that I'm aware of. So I don't think the issue's been updated, and I don't think anyone has spent time yet looking at that. But that might be something I can get, we can get around to in the next couple of months.
Okay. Okay, so I don't know.
But I mean, it will need to happen. So whether we keep this here or remove it and then put it back when we need to. But I mean, we are going to need to make build infra changes at some point to put the Rust tool set that we decide on onto the machines.
Should I get it out of the meeting agenda until we actually do work on it?
I would be okay with that.
Or well, I think I don't even have permission to do that here. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Leave that with me. I'll do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, if we're postponing this, until a few months from now, we can get it out of here and then get back to it later. I'm still working on it for our platform, so work in progress. But haven't uploaded anything yet, so I'll add updates when that happens. Okay. Anything else? Topics, comments, questions?
One real quick one. The OSX code signing infrastructure. At one point, we were injecting secrets into those builds to do the code signing, and then we switched over to putting those keys in the keychain and putting the certificates on the images. I would prefer that we switch back, because you should not put keys into, you should not bake secrets into an image. You should always inject them. Because then, if we ever have to rotate them or change them or anything, then it requires a whole image build to make the changes. But that's all in the OSX tooling in Node itself. And so should I just open an issue describing why I would want that back the other way? Because it also simplifies the build process if we don't have to put, create keychain entries and store secrets in the build itself or into the images.
Okay. Yeah. So are we talking about is this going to be a revert, or is this going to be someone's going to have to PR a change into the current scripts?
It might be a revert works. I'd have to look at.
I don't know how far they've moved on since things were reworked.
It's just that one script, the OSX.
Yeah, I know the script you mean. I just don't remember what was changed to it. Yeah. That's right.
In fact, some of the stuff is still there. Like there's a few build variables that it's checking for the existence of. So it's like they still have to be set by the build in order for it to run, even though they don't use them. It could be just a minor PR to switch that back, but it'd be so much better to not have the secrets baked into the images and have them injected by the build like that. Okay, I know I looked at some of the comments. People were like, "It's safer not to put this in the command line." It's like no, it's not. But
I think that this is my opinion. I think that you can make an executive decision on what you feel is better for the infrastructure, and then we adapt the scripts. So the scripts are in the Node repo. We adapt the scripts to match the infra. Obviously, then there's going to have to be some coordination between, if you take the stuff out. Well, I suppose we can we can inject them and then remove the stuff out of the images later.
Yeah.
To give some sort of crossover point to allow. So, because what we'll have to do is every version of Node. So Node, the nightly builds from main, and then Node 25 and 24 and 22 and 20.
Right.
They'll all have to be updated. It's not impossible. Right. It can be done. It just requires a degree of coordination. So again, maybe create an issue that we can track on the build side, like what the actual status of the infrastructure is, and then also in the same issue we can list like the Node version, that the Node release lines, and then say like, we've updated this release line, and then we've backported the change into this release line, and once they're all done, that's the point that we can then remove the things, the actual baked in stuff from the image, because no new releases would be reliant on them being there.
Right. And the, as an example, like I was just looking at the Apple account yesterday, the certificates that we're using to sign with Apple expire in 2027. So if we still have builds that need to be signed after 2027, but still rely on these macOS 13 images at that point, they're going to be really hard to update. To
but aren't
put the new.
I thought you said that we come all the release machines are now macOS 15, or do we still have macOS 13?
That is absolutely true. Yes, the release machines are macOS 15. We don't have to code sign on the 13 images anymore. Okay, well, maybe it won't be that hard. Never mind. I forgot about that part. So yes, but still, it's just one of those things where it's just better not to have secrets in an image, because then I don't, I could put that image in a public repo somewhere and be like, these are the images that we use to build releases. If you want to build them yourself, get your own certain.
On this particular one, I don't think you need to ask for permission. I think
make the case and create
make that as an executive decision. It's like, this is for the safety of the infrastructure, but then we will need to land things in the scripts in the core repo.
Yeah.
So
now there's a different executive / decision that ideally things like build scripts aren't baked into the Node repo and are something that the Node repo retrieves from the build repo, so that we do have more control over these sorts of things.
I think there's a small fuzzy line between what is specific to the to the actual infrastructure that we have. So I can see on one hand that you have so much of the scripts that allow code signing for anyone that wants to sign their own binary. If you're building Node yourself, you won't have access to the code signing certificate for Node, but maybe there is some way that you can sign the binary yourself. So there is a sort of line between having the scripts in a place that people can run them. Because one of the things that I hear from not necessarily on macOS but on other platforms is that, hey, it's great that you've got all of this Node code in GitHub, but actually what I do is I download the source tarball and build from the tarball. So I expect everything that I need to be able to build Node to be in that source tarball and not have to go off to GitHub. Or in theory you could build Node on an air-gapped machine and not have to reach out into the other to download something else. Now, on the build infra, we do pull down the build repo because we have things like the compiler script, but Node itself doesn't need the compiler selector script as long as your build environment has picked the right compiler anyway. So that's a convenience for us. I guess for code signing, it's a little bit, like you said, part of it needs to be able to at least invoke the signing, but then the actual configuration as to how do you pass the parameters in to say that this is the actual key you need to sign. Because I think we did something similar in Windows, where Windows has the calls in the repo to do the signing, but obviously that's all reliant on stuff on the machine being set to so
that it has to exist. And our current Windows code signing environment requires connectivity to our Azure account to use the Windows Azure trusted signing and stuff. And so it's sort of one of those things where it's like code signing feels like a very build specific thing and not you're building it on your own. Like, and especially like, our current OS X code signing thing, like there's no documentation telling people that, oh, you need to add this stuff to your keychain in order to sign it yourself. Like none of the, like what you've actually got to do. It's just sort of like, it just does it. And, so I don't, for everything else, for the build and everything else, sure. For code signing, it just almost feels like either it needs to be very less infrastructure dependent, which is how it feels now. And just, these are the variables that need to be set in order to sign your code, which is kind of where I'd like to get back to. So, I mean, it's okay.
It almost sounds like this would be a good reason to switch back to make it easier for other people.
It's very tightly coupled right now. So, okay. Cool. Thanks. That gives me some good guidance for how to approach making a change like that, or suggesting a change like that.
Obviously, changes will need to be made to the core repo. I think other than that, that question out of the way, in terms of the actual infra and the actual, like you said, something specific to our setup, that's, you know, we can make that decision within the working group. So don't need to get the TSC involved in that.
Yeah.
Just make those decisions. I think in those cases, you just make people aware of it, give people the chance to object, but then, you know, if no one objects, then we go ahead with it. Obviously, in this particular case, because we need to make changes to Node itself, the scripts in Node, then yeah, it will eventually involve opening a pull request. And I think that's what we need to do, just open the pull request and say, this will match what we want to do on the build infrastructure side. And then people can object to that if they feel like it then. But I suspect most people will just allow that through based on, you know, we've made changes on the infra side for security of our supply, you know, for supplying the binary and stuff. So, you know, this is the knock-on effect of those. And then, you know, we will need to backport whatever changes to the other release lines, but I'm on the release working group, so I can help coordinate that on the release side. I don't see that being a major problem. It's similar to, you know, when we made the Windows signing changes, we needed to ripple those back through, but then we, you know, there is a slight hiccup on that one because of, you know, some of those releases being built on older Windows machines where it doesn't seem to be working for whatever reason. But on Mac OS, like I said, we only have the one Mac OS release set of machines now, so presumably, you know, whatever works for one should work for the others.
Yeah.
As long as we
the Windows one is sort of, we're done with Node 20 as of April 2026. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have 108 signatures left, and every release uses 6 of them. And so we have 18 more button presses until April. So hopefully we don't have problems building a release where we have to press it several times.
Yeah, or we don't get an unfortunate set of you know, a spam load of security vulnerabilities that we have to keep releasing updates for.
Right.
Well, let's hope.
We definitely got the value out of our 3,000 signatures that we had there, so spent them all.
You're suggesting that when we get to April, we do a couple of extra releases just to exhaust the things and stuff? Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay, great. Any other topics? Questions, comments? All right, if not, then I'm going to stop sharing and end the webinar, and we'll talk in 3 weeks.